There are some days that they change the course of history. Well, February 28th, 2026 was absolutely one of those days. The world woke up to news that was about to ignite a region, rattle global markets, and seriously test the limits of international diplomacy. So let's break down the events of that single chaotic day. And it all kicked off with this just a stunning announcement. This single quote from the White House wasn't just declaring an action, it was declaring an intention, the complete dismantlement of the Iranian regime. We're talking about a high-stakes gamble with immediate and, explosive consequences. The operation was given a name that sounds like it was ripped straight out of a blockbuster movie, Epic Fury. And its opening act? Well, it unfolded with shocking speed and precision. Okay, so the sequence of events here is absolutely critical. First came the confirmation of a successful decapitation strike against Iran's supreme leader. Only then did the public announcement of the bigger operation come out. Now, Iranian state media initially denied their leader's death, but then came the satellite imagery, which is pretty undeniable. It quickly silenced those claims, confirming the destruction. The conflict was on. A strike of this magnitude was never, ever going to go unanswered. Iran's retaliation was swift and it was widespread, immediately turning the entire region into an incredibly volatile war zone. The crucial thing to see here is the sheer scope of the retaliation. This was not some token response. Iran launched massive barrages of ballistic missiles and drones, and they weren't just targeting Israel, but key American military installations right across the entire Persian Gulf. It was a coordinated, multi-front counterattack, and with any conflict, there's always an immediate and tragic human cost. The first reports that came in painted a grim picture. In southern Iran, a school was reportedly hit, killing at least 85 people. In Tel Aviv, an Iranian missile claimed the life of a woman. These were the first civilian casualties, and you knew they certainly wouldn't be the last. So, as the physical conflict raged, a whole different kind of war began, an economic one. And it's centered on this tiny strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz. This is one of the most strategically important locations on the planet for one very simple reason: oil. And this single number shows you the immediate threat. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Navy made a really bold move, closing the strait to all maritime traffic. Just like that, 20%, a full fifth of the world's daily oil supply, was choked off. The potential economic damage is, well, it's staggering. So this was no longer just a regional conflict. It was escalating and fast into a full-blown global crisis, sending shockwaves through markets and capital cities all around the world. I mean, this is what happens when 20% of the world's oil vanishes overnight. The markets panicked. Prices didn't just rise, they absolutely skyrocketed. For a world that was already battling inflation, this news was a complete nightmare, especially during a U.S. midterm election year. The diplomatic fallout was just as fractured. You had the UN, Russia, and China immediately condemning the U.S. and Israeli strikes, calling them unprovoked aggression. But at the same time, America's traditional European allies, the UK, France, and Germany, were way more cautious. They only condemned the Iranian retaliation. The world was clearly divided. But a crisis on this scale, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. While the world's attention was laser-focused on the Middle East, other critical events were quietly unfolding in the background. Because, the world keeps spinning, and on this particular day, it was spinning through a minefield of other simmering conflicts and major global developments. For example, an open war was raging on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. In Ukraine, even with the temporary truce, the risk of a nuclear incident at that Zaporizhzhia plant was still critically high. And in another geopolitical chess move, the U.S. was formally warning Syria against getting too close to China's tech infrastructure. Meanwhile, in the tech world, a tectonic shift. OpenAI secured a jaw-dropping $110 billion in new funding from a whole group of giants. This move signaled a massive consolidation of power in the AI space, and it was happening at the very same moment the U.S. government was trying to restrict other AI firms. And the global headlines just kept on coming. Japan's prime minister took drastic steps to fight inflation. A pretty controversial health deal was signed between the U.S. and the DRC. And in Washington, a former president was testifying in a high-profile hearing about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It was just a day of immense consequence on every single front. But amidst all of the chaos, the bombs, the market crashes, the political maneuvering, something completely unexpected broke through all the noise. In what was maybe the most bizarre juxtaposition of the day, the global conversation was also captivated by a story that had absolutely nothing to do with conflict or crisis. Meet Punch, an abandoned baby monkey at a zoo near Tokyo who, along with his inseparable orangutan plush toy, became an overnight global viral sensation. On a day that was filled with so much darkness, thousands and thousands of people were instead flocking to see this tiny creature, a small beacon of innocence. And that leaves us with a fascinating question. On a day when the world seemed to be on fire, a huge portion of it was looking at a baby monkey. It makes you wonder, in a world of non-stop information and overlapping crises, what we choose to focus on maybe says as much about us as the events themselves.